Well, given the US has pulled out of the Paris Agreement, why is the coalition sticking with a net zero target? There must be elements of your base thinking you should just junk it.
Well, look, in terms of climate, I think there are three important objectives for us. One is that we need to decarbonise. We need to have reliable power. In Townsville at the moment, where it's been raining for the last 10 days and unfortunately more rain is predicted, under Chris Bowen's model, under the Anthony Albanese renewables-only policy, Townsville would be in darkness now, as well as water lapping through yards and into homes and businesses. It wouldn't work under their model unless diesel generators could be turned on, because there has been limited sunshine and the power can't go on an intermittent basis. We need baseload power. We also need to have an eye on price. There's no consideration of what families or businesses are paying for electricity. It's 3 times the cost of other comparable regions in the world. And why are we harming families? I think the Labor Party, I think the biggest damage that Anthony Albanese has inflicted over the course of the last 2.5 years has been through the energy policy. I think he has driven up prices. He's created an unstable market. We're now talking about importing gas into Victoria in a country like ours.
Well, was he supposed to build a coal-fired power station? I mean, what's the quick fix to this during a transition?
The quick fix is not to have uncertainty, investment uncertainty, and to give the market the signal that the only thing the government's interested in is green hydrogen and other emerging technologies. It's pie-in-the-sky stuff. And the Albanese government has been about trying to please and placate Green voters in inner city Sydney and Melbourne, and he's forgotten about people in the suburbs and in the regions, and the energy policy is a classic example of that in play.
All right, I'm going to run through a few cost of living questions now. What's the coalition plan to reduce the price of groceries?
Well, Andrew, one of the biggest impacts on groceries is the energy policy. So it's not just your power bill that's gone up at home, it's the IGA store, it's the cold storage operator, it's the supermarket with their freezers. And the trouble is that all of that additional cost is being passed on to consumers. So one of the best things that we can do to get grocery prices down is to make sure that we've got productivity in the economy and to make sure that we have a downward pressure on energy prices. Because under the government's proposal with their 2035 targets, prices for electricity and gas are going to go up much higher, and therefore grocery prices will stay higher for longer. So even if interest rates come down by 0.25%, and let's hope they come down soon, it's not going to have the impact on those businesses and on grocery prices. It's all of these decisions that the government's made or haven't made over the last 2.5 years that have contributed to grocery prices going up.
Well, you sort of talk about getting more gas in the system to reduce prices before you get on the nuclear thing. How do you do that?
Well, we need to make sure that there's an investment proposition. So at the moment, as you know, the government's talking about a nature-positive anti-mining bill that they've withdrawn because of the WA election at the moment. But that essentially cruels mining in Western Australia. 12 months ago, Chris Bowen would not mention the word gas. And now reality is struck. All of a sudden they're saying, well, maybe we need some gas in the system. So a government that is open to and supportive of investment in gas, of further discoveries, of bringing projects on more quickly. They funded the Environmental Defenders Office to stop gas projects from taking place. And now we're seeing the reality hit and gas having to be imported into Victoria, which is an outrage.
What's the coalition plan to reduce the cost of insurance?
Well, again, there are a number of factors. I think the mitigation issues play in. There are stamp duty and GST issues at a state level which add to premium cost. There are obviously reinsurance issues, some of which are outside of our country's control, but we need competition, we need depth in the insurance pool, and we need to make sure that we're not being ripped off by insurance companies. And as we've done with the supermarkets, where we have threatened divestment if consumers are being ripped off, similarly in the insurance market, we will intervene to make sure that consumers get a fair go, because at the moment people are paying too much for their insurance, and what's resulting is that people aren't taking out insurance. So that moral hazard is created for a number of reasons, and people just simply can't afford to insure their car or their home at the moment.
What's the coalition plan to reduce the cost of housing, especially rent?
Well, firstly, we need more supply. The federal government, both Liberal and Labor, have been good at fuelling demand, so providing support, and necessarily so, to first home buyers. But because we don't have responsibility for planning it's done at a state and local level, we haven't had an influence on the supply side. So firstly, we've got a $5 billion fund which helps councils get over the balance sheet constraints that they've got, so help them pay for some of the infrastructure that is required around sewerage, around water, around roads and connectivity to get the next stage built of that land development. So bring on more supply. The government's brought in a couple of million people over the course, of the last year. When you look at the numbers, quite staggering. The number of people they've brought through the migration program, that has completely and utterly driven the demand for housing at a time when we've had an 11-year low on housing starts. And so no wonder there's a housing crisis and therefore a rental crisis as well. This wasn't a problem 5 years ago. The government has created this problem. They're not building many houses at all. And when you speak to developers, they're just saying, look, the cost of construction means that we can't proceed with that project. So there's a supply side, there's a demand side that we have to provide support to, and we've said that in relation to accessing superannuation to get young people into housing more quickly, and that's incredibly important.
If the government extended its subsidy on power bills, would you support that?
If it's going to be inflationary and it's going to keep interest rates higher for longer, and it's going to keep grocery prices higher for longer, and it's going to keep electricity prices higher for longer, then no.
The suggestion is it doesn't. It actually lowers inflation.
Well,
you don't accept that?
It has a spike in the quarter where it has where the payment's being made. So there's a slight dip, and then it comes back, and that's the problem. Is that that's what the government's seeing at the moment.
So someone has to end it sometime. So it may as well be.
There's just nothing free in this world, and the government needs to stop pretending that things are for free. You can provide support to people who have a HECS debt, and you can wipe that debt, but don't pretend that somebody else, another taxpayer, isn't paying for it. So I just think we need to have a debate about, firstly, the government's not going to deliver their promise of $275 reduction on power prices. People's power bills are up by $1,000. The Prime Minister, don't forget, promised that power prices would be dropping by $275 per year. That hasn't happened. Power prices have gone up.
It's absolutely true it hasn't happened, but where do you get the $1,000 from?
Well, that is the figure that's available to us, and people's power prices have gone up by $1,000. 34% electricity bills have gone up. Now, you can have a one-off hit where you can say, here's $300, but people aren't stupid. People know that that's not going to survive for the next quarter or next year. We have to have an energy policy which helps us decarbonise, helps keep the lights on, and helps reduce power prices.